Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Okay, friends, so you might wonder, what is this Namo Buddhaya? It's not a common chant at least by Theravadan Buddhists. But of course, Namo Buddhaya means homage to the Buddha, literally translating. But there's two meanings to that, two levels of meaning of the Buddha, homage to the Buddha. So on one level, the common level, everyone would immediately think, they're referring to Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, which is right. But in sort of the language of the Dhamma, the Buddha actually is necessarily a physical person. Because even the Buddha, there's a story that there was a sick monk who was very sick, and the monk thought he was going to die pretty soon. He wanted to see the Buddha one more time. So he sent some of the other monks to tell the Buddha, please come and visit this sick monk. He's wants to see you one last time. So the Buddha, out of compassion, he went there. And then the Buddha came into the room. This monk struggled to kind of get up from his bed, and was trying to get up and, made an effort to try to bow to the Buddha, I guess. And the Buddha said, enough, Vakali. This monk's name was Vakali. He said, enough. What is the need to look at this physical meat bone body? And then he said something very profound. Whoever sees the Buddha sees the Dhamma. And whoever sees the Dhamma sees the Buddha. So in that statement of the Buddha, he's really pointing out that the real Buddha is that enlightened awareness, is the truth of the Dhamma that he realized in his experience of enlightenment, and the transformation of the mundane consciousness into the supramundane awareness. So when I'm chanting Namo Buddhaya, especially when you're doing it at the beginning of meditation, then it's the second level of the underlying wisdom awareness that I'm referring to, or alluding to when I'm chanting this this vibration of Namo Buddhaya. So basically, it's just to use sort of conventional speech that Namo Buddhaya, that Buddhaya represents the vibration of unconditioned awareness, or the vibration of the deathless state. And so on many occasions, the Buddha has said that, open is the door to the deathless. So in the first sermon of the Buddha, Turning the Wheel of Dhamma, he said, open is the door to the deathless. For every person to come, or for wise persons to come and do the practice that leads to directly perceiving that. So anyway, by chanting that Namo Buddhaya at the beginning of meditation, and also the tone, the sort of the long drawn out tones, it just helps to zoom the mind in to that, into the body and into the present moment. And so that's why I wanted to talk a little bit more about that in this Dhamma talk, because that's really the essence, the real deeper essence of the practice of the Dhamma. Of course, the practice of Dhamma has many, many, many benefits on every level, you might say, of the body and mind, but the deepest level is eventually coming to that realization that of the present moment awareness. It's virtually always there underneath our active mind. Now, so I wanted to talk more about the process of the meditation practice according to the 4 foundations of mindfulness, because that's basically what we are following in our development of mindfulness. At least when people talk about mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, they're referring to, or even indirectly, the development of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And basically, it's that path or practice that leads back from the external world, leads back through all the layers of body, mind, vibration, and experience to come to that transcendent or non-dual awareness. And it's not really that difficult to do if one understands the mechanics and understands the methodological development of those sort of stages of the practice. Now, the Buddha taught the 4 foundations of mindfulness, in a certain order, and that's because it was the natural sort of order of the unfolding, or the ability to get to deeper and deeper levels of the body and mind, but especially the mind. So the mindfulness of the body, as I've mentioned many times before, it starts with mindfulness of breathing. And mindfulness of breathing, most people say, oh, that's a concentration technique. Okay, well, that's a limited viewpoint of it. But it's a way of focusing our attention. But basically, the function of it is to draw our attention away from the external world and find the body, or come to the external body. And because normally our mind is continually moving between the past and the future, imagining things, getting lost in our thoughts, and rarely do we ever have any full awareness of the body in the present moment. Maybe a very vague kind of awareness, we stub our toe, or, you look in the mirror and you see your image, or, you see your, look at your arm or your hand or something, or feel a belly ache or whatever, but this is very superficial. But most of the time our mind is running between the past and the future. And all problems that we have are related in one way or another to the past and the future. We remember things from the past and project that into the future with either desire or aversion or hatred or so many other types of thoughts. Most of our life is revolved around this, what I call the pleasure-pain syndrome, of thinking about how can I get more pleasurable feeling and how can I avoid the painful feelings. So the mindfulness of breathing is a way to, because you're drawing air in from outside, right? So that it comes through the nostrils, right? So it comes through the nostrils and it goes into the lungs. So therefore, when you are paying attention to the breathing, you're bringing the attention, at least finding the body. So it brings the mind to feel the external body. Let's say if you're concentrating to feel the sensation at the tip of the nose, or if you're concentrating to feel the clothing touching the skin of the expanding and contracting sensations. So you use that as points of concentration, but basically it's a way to anchor to the present moment. And actually, I prefer not to use this term concentration too much because it has a lot of different meanings for different people, and they think concentration is like a cat waiting to pounce on a mouse or something like that, which is a kind of attention. So, but anyway, as I mentioned this morning, even concentration is only mindfulness, applied mindfulness. So anyway, the mindfulness of breathing gets you to the body. But then the second, and it also, while doing that, you are learning how to overcome some of the hindrances, hopefully, and coming to the present moment. So it's a way to get out of the past and the future and to connect with the beginning of present moment awareness. Because when you're able to follow the in and out breathing more and more without like being able to count your breaths from 1 to 10 without the mind getting lost. Oh, by the way, how many of you were able to do that this morning or tried counting your breaths from 1 to 10? How many people could do it on the first shot without any intervening thoughts? Second time? Third time? So anyway, even though it sounds easy, when we actually try to do it, it's not that easy. Because we've made it not easy. So anyway, so even the counting of the breaths is a way of it's a kind of a challenge to not want to always have to go back and start again at 1. But anyway, once you weaken the hindrances, so what then are feeling the subtler movements of the breathing, or weaken the hindrances, then the Buddha has you go on to just feel the postures. So the breathing basically is a way of getting to the body. And once you've gotten to the body and are able to hold the attention, then the breathing is still there, but at the same time, you can feel the body around the breathing. The breathing is always there in the center. That's what the meaning of concentration is. It means vitakka and vichara. It means you've developed your applied and sustained attention so that it's there, it's staying in front of your mind without any much effort. In the beginning, it's a big effort, right? To always bring the mind back, bring the mind back. And but then as the hindrances are weakened, then the breathing starts to stay there kind of by itself. And actually that's probably the meaning of the first jhana is where you have applied and sustained thought developed. So it's staying on the object by itself. And along with that, you get the pleasant sensations, the piti and the sukha sensations, which are the subtle vibrations, which are more of the present moment, the vibrations of the stillness and the vibrations of present moment awareness, which is also the life force. And you start to feel that in a very prominent way, which makes the mind even more contented and wanting to just stay put. But it's because of the vibration of the present moment awareness. It's not the concentration. The concentration is only a trick to get the mind to come to the present moment awareness. Not a trick, but it's a technique. But the object itself doesn't become so important anymore because it's staying there now automatically in your mind. Maybe not 100%, but even if it was just there 80%, that would be a very powerful level of awareness. Anyway, so now you have come to the body, then you let the awareness kind of start feeling the body. And the concentration also is like turning up the power of a microscope. So the longer you're able to hold your attention on the breathing of the body, it's like turning up the power of a microscope, and you see subtler and finer details that you hadn't seen before. And also the ability to contemplate the breath and to a lot of people fail in the breathing awareness because they think it's keeping the mind on one point. But the Buddha never said that. The Buddha, he said, to understand the breathing and to experience the full breathing and to understand the being aware of the beginning, the middle, and the end of the breath and how each breath is sort of different. And so it's this clear comprehension of the breathing that helps you to keep the mind interested. Because look, it's like a scientist, right? If a scientist is looking through a microscope and he's just saying, you might get bored of it. But if you start seeing how a red blood cell goes over and eats up a white one, and how this one goes into that, and how long they last, then it becomes very interesting, right? He's like, wow. So the same way, when we train our attention to become interested in the breathing by contemplating how the breath is changing every moment, and seeing how sometimes it's long, sometimes it's short, and the various that helps this interest to keep on the object. Otherwise, the mind might get bored very easily. Just in, out, blah, blah, and but you really give it something to investigate, and that's part of the Dhamma Vichaya, the second factor of enlightenment, the investigation of Dhamma. It's a very important aspect of the developing the mindfulness. So anyway, then when you actually get to the body, then you just feel the body in the various postures. When it's sitting, you know that you're sitting. When you're standing, you know that you're standing. When you're walking, you know that you're walking. And then what I was trying to show you this morning or practice this morning, when you're lifting the arm, know that you're lifting the arm. Many people lift their arm, but their mind is thinking about all kinds of other things. You're so interested in the itch that you're not aware of your arm. You're only thinking about how quick you're going to get rid of that itch. And so you don't really, focus on the arm going up. So that's why from the postures itself, the Buddha goes into the movements of the body. And like walking. So, when the foot is lifting up, when it's swinging forward, when it's lowering back to the ground, when the body is going forward. And you pay that moment-to-moment attention to the movements of the body, the postures and the movements of the body. And then even to take the mind deeper inside. You see, first of all, you find the outside of the body, and then you work with keeping the mind on the outside of the body by noticing your arm lifting up, your head turning this way, or your feet walking this way or that, or notice when you're slouching. And so you pay attention to that moment-to-moment changes in the external body. But as you're keeping the mind there, then you get under the skin and you start feeling the sensations under the skin. So first you come to the external body, and then you get under the skin to the inner body, which means feeling the inner sensations, like the blood pulsing in your arteries or just various other types of little itching, prickling sensations and so on. There's so many of them. And then the Buddha also had you examine the body by noticing, there's hair on the head, hair on the body, nails, teeth, skin, and then going through the 32 body part contemplations. Now, that is also just another way of keeping your mind focused on the body and feeling them, and feeling how these things are always undergoing change and so on as well, and how we get attached to them. But that's still sort of conceptual. You're saying, hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin, and so on. But then the next stage is actually then feeling the body as just 4 elements. Now this is where it gets even more interesting. Everybody knows there's hair on the head, skin, nails, teeth, and all these various body parts. But that's still caught up. You can still get attached to those body parts. But then, because now you're getting with each of these different contemplations, you're gaining deeper concentration and going sort of into a deeper level of awareness. So when you get to the 4 elements, so first you went to a solid body, then you go to just 32 different parts, and then you come now to just 4 elements, which means I prefer to use the term vibration rather than elements, because Westerners who are, in the school system, we learn about the elemental charts in chemistry or physics, and they think these things are some actual things, right? Iron, whatever, all these. But it's deeper than that. So that's one of the limitations of English language, is that it doesn't have words to adequately describe some of the abstruse things that the Buddha was talking about. So anyway, but the four elements, basically the feeling of solidity, fluidity, heat, and motion. Now, whenever you feel any part of the body, basically it's one of these kind of vibrations. Like if your eyes are closed and I say, feel your buttocks, then it's drawn down to feel, that feeling of something being solid and hard there, right? Or if your hands touching together, or even the clothes touching the skin. So these are just vibrations that the mind remembers. So this is even going into the beginnings of observing the mind and understanding the mind. That, this body basically is just the mass of vibrations. And any biologist can tell you that. I mean, what is this solid? This body feels solid, right? But in reality, what is it made of? Just billions or trillions of cells, right? And what is a cell? It's a little tiny invisible organism. And that's made up of molecules. And molecules are made up of atoms. Atoms are made up of, electrons, protons, neutrons, something we can't even imagine, but you can feel them. So basically what I'm just saying, what the Buddha was trying to get us to see, although he didn't directly say that, but we have to infer it, that the body is just basically energy. It's not something that's solid in its ultimate breakdown. And it's actually our mind is what makes it solid. So the four-element contemplation actually was one of my favorite contemplations when I was a young monk, and the one I got the most insights from. So whenever you feel something in the body, instead of saying, oh, that's my hands, or that's my tooth, or, you just say, that's the earth vibration, or the water vibration. You feel saliva in the mouth, you feel a tear running down oh, that's a tear, why am I crying? No, it's just a water element. You see, so you're getting beyond thought now. Now in the beginning, you're still using thoughts. But now you're getting beyond that. It's just to feel the elemental vibrations. So we stop calling it a body or a body part or anything. You just say that's the earth vibration, water vibration, movement. If there's movement, like if you feel it, okay, that's the air being shifted around in the body, causes the body to move. Or even turning your head is due to the air element. So on. There's a whole complex meditation involved around that. Most people don't really get into that, but so that gets down to the point of understanding that this body is just basically energy vibrations. And then that can be applied to the other senses too. And when you hear a sound, right now, if I ask you, what are you hearing? You're saying you're hearing Bhante Rahula talk. No, you're thinking Bhante Rahula is talking. What you're hearing is just sound. What's actually coming through the ears is just sound. But your mind takes that sound and creates a picture out of it, an idea about it. But that's mental activity. That's not the pure experience, the initial experience. So this is very important for understanding anatta, actually. It's one of the bases for understanding not self. So even this contemplation of the body, if done in this systematic way, can lead to these levels of wisdom. by understanding and training to see everything as just vibrations. And even thinking is just a mental vibration. So you remember something in the past, it's just it's no different than a sound, it's just, or a smell, it's just a mental vibration that the mind cognizes and said, oh, that happened to me in the past. Or you can recreate the picture of your mother or father or some dear friend in your mind, right? Close your eyes, but the mind is just recreating an image that has been programmed in there. So cultivating this understanding that everything is basically just vibrations. So anyway, that contemplation of the body, it also gets you in touch with all the sensations have feeling counterpoints. So the second foundation of mindfulness is the mindfulness of feelings, Vedanusati. And those are running at the same time as the body, because every feeling in the body has a corresponding pleasant, painful, or neutral tone to it. And it's just the way we've been programmed to react to those sensations. So the feeling arises due to the material vibration, and we regard it as either being something pleasant or painful or neutral. Most of the things that come through our senses are probably neutral, but the ones that grab our attention the most are the painful or pleasant ones. And probably it's the painful ones that grab us the most, right? Because those are the ones we have that the ego reacts to more strongly. Every time you have a pain in the body, you see that one and immediately trying to get rid of it. Subtler, pleasant sensations are more subtle. We don't immediately react to the pleasant sensation. It gradually, little by little, starts growing, and then we're getting relaxed, and then it's basically the mind not wanting to do anything else. It's the pleasant sensation, just being content with the present moment. So it's a little bit more subtle. So, but we pay attention to those sensations. So the second factor, mindfulness of the body, is the stepping stone for being able to directly observe your feelings and perceptions, or the feelings. And I mean observe them with some detachment. Because usually we just react to the feelings because there's no detachment within the mind. So it's the concentration that you got by practicing mindfulness of breathing and mindfulness of posture and getting more and more centered in the present moment that creates this space of awareness. So that now you can observe a pain arising, but it's surrounded by this space of awareness, so its sting is not so evident, or it doesn't grab the mind so quickly. There's a little bit of space we can be, oh, there's painful sensations arising, okay. And give you a few critical seconds to contemplate it. Is this sensation really that bad? Then it also triggers off the intention to want to move. So the sensations are what trigger off our desires and aversions. The desire to hold on to a pleasurable feeling, or the desire to get away from a painful sensation. I mean, you can see that clearly before you've actually done some action upon it. So normally we don't have that ability to do that. So there's a very profound and deep level of sort of psychology, of directly observing the mental process and training ourselves to be able to change the way we behave. Now, even Western psychology doesn't know, mostly doesn't know that. Or if they do, it's only lip service and they don't know how to actually do it. That's why the Buddha is the Buddha. And only the Buddha or very few rare individuals in the course of humankind history had developed that kind of deep type of concentrated awareness and understanding of the mental process. And that's why that, that's why he was called the Buddha, the one who's awake. So anyway, so by, all of our actions, all of our karmic actions revolve around the feelings. And so by things and being able to resist the temptation to act upon them, we can clearly see the thoughts. It kind of forces up the thought. You can see that desire to scratch, right? Any of you kind of seen that, in your meditation, when your concentration is a little bit better, you can have a pain and be able to, just observe it for a few moments. The more you observe it, and the stronger it gets, it forces that intention up, the desire to scratch. You can see that the tension in the arm, that desire really to lift the arm. And you watch the desire. And this is a very important part of transformation. People talk about, transforming the mind. Well, how do you do that? Well, one of the key secrets or, practices for that is that we train ourselves to observe the intention and not what is triggering off the intention. In other words, normally we have some aversion. We're too busy looking at the object that created the aversion, like the pain in your knee or somebody making a loud sound, and we're thinking about that person. We don't actually watch the mind, the actual aversion itself, feeling what it is doing in the body, or we're not aware of just the desire itself, like wanting. And so when there's this, because that's where the intention comes. Intention is one of the earliest activities of the mental process, especially in terms of the karma, where the karma is starting to be created. It's the intention to want to do something, the intention to speak, the intention to strike with the body, even the intention to think, actually. But normally we don't see the intentions because they happen so quickly, and we're focused on the object of that intention, not the intention itself. So this is a shift. This is where the Buddha has a shift the intent, the awareness, not to the object, but to the intention itself. Because as we continue to focus on the object, it keeps feeding the desire or the aversion. But this is the key. Instead of focusing on the object, we just being aware of the aversion of self. So just by being aware of aversion, or wanting, and feel what it's doing in the body. So now you're no longer paying to the original object that triggered that off. And so you break the feedback loop. This is very important because everything in the body and mind works off feedback. So by just focusing the mind on the sensations itself and in the actual intentions, you're no longer paying attention to the object that triggered it off. And so it stops feeding back, and so the desire quickly vanishes. Because the desire needs the object to keep feeding it. And the object needs the desire to keep feeding the attraction to it also. And this is the key to Buddhist psychology, especially the psychology of transformation and of breaking the habit cycle, breaking the habit cycle and the delusions that are connected with the habit. So this is why in the practice, as we are, maintaining our attention to, sitting and breathing, and by continuing to keep the sitting and breathing there, the body, because that's everything is happening through that breathing body. All those things are happening through the nervous system. And so by keeping that awareness there, you're keeping the level of concentration, and you will be able to see those impulses. By staying grounded in the body, you can see the urges arise, because they're all just nervous system impulses. And the nervous system permeates the whole body. So you can see those early warning signals before that painful sensation has kind of, really grabbed a hold of your mind and triggered off all kinds of thoughts. But if you're not grounded in the body, then we don't see those subtle early warning signals, and then the mind just reacts, and by then it's kind of too late to easily untangle the mind from all of its perceptions and so on. And so, that's the importance of, cultivating and developing the mindfulness of the body. A lot of people say mindfulness of the body, that's kindergarten stuff, and I just want anatta. I want anatta, I want to see the mind. Well, that's why most of them wind up not succeeding or not seeing the mind, because they're jumping ahead, putting the cart before the horse. So by getting grounded in the body, you're setting up the whole field, the methodical development and the stepping stone. Each one is a stepping stone for the other. So the body is a stepping stone for being able to directly observe the feelings. And the feelings, as you're able to observe those, you can see the thoughts and the urges that are arising from these feelings. And by observing those thoughts and urges as just for what they are, just urging, wanting, pain, but not connecting them to the object that gave rise to it, you then, that type of urge or wanting will also vanish, as I just mentioned, because it needs the feedback from the object. And then that's how the mind can then just stay grounded in itself and not going out to create, take some action based on it. Because if you're not aware of the urge, then the urge will then trigger off the action, let's say to scratch an itch. Right? So that's a very good example because it's one of the most prominent and continuous things that are going on in the body, not only itches, but different types of unpleasant sensations. And that's again why the mindfulness of the body is considered to be the starting point for developing that. And so you can see that urge to want to move your knee, or the urge to want to, you hear a sound, you see the urge to want to look, because you're curious, who's coughing, open your eye and look, right? So you can see all these urges, but just be aware, urging, wanting, hearing. And that cuts off the chasing that object and allows you to stay in the center. And that leads to the present moment awareness. Because all that energy that would have gone out to, react to things and trigger off various types of memories and emotions and so on, all that energy, gets kept in the center. And that adds to the present moment awareness. And then you can actually feel it. Feel that vibration when you're no longer reacting. When you've withdrawn all that outward going energy, then it becomes very concentrated. And, you can actually, feel that subtle vibration of awareness. And also the sense of self starts getting weaker. Because the sense of I, me, and mine. So that's normally what I kind of equate to be the consciousness. So along with what we've been discussing, these foundations of mindfulness. So let me just kind of finish that sequence. So the breathing leads to the body, getting grounded and focused in the body leads to the direct perception of the pleasant and painful sensations. By focusing on those and withdrawing the energy from reacting to those, that allows you to see the thoughts or the memories connected with those sensations more clearly. And by watching those, it cuts off the further reaction to them. And it's our history of all these reactions and our attachments and aversions that make up our sense of myself, my history. You can remember back all the things that you did, during your life, right? So that makes up the sort of you, right? And I was this way as a young person, and I was this way, as every few years of your life it changes, and that's sort of the sum total of our experience. It's being recreated all the time. So when you withdraw all that energy from that by not reacting to the various sensory stimulations, by developing mindfulness and concentration, then that sense of self starts to fade away. So anyway, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So observing the feelings helps you to observe the mind and all the different mental activities. And then by observing the mental activities, you can then observe the subtle dhammas, or you can observe then you have enough detachment to be able to contemplate the five aggregates in the six senses and to see how quickly these things are arising and vanishing. Because when you don't react to something, it vanishes immediately. The reason things stick around and perturb us because we keep giving continued attention to them, thinking that they're somehow something real and we need to do something about it, but really that's all just a creation of our mind for the most part. So while you're doing this practice of mindfulness of the body and the feelings, and the perceptions, and the thoughts, you see how they're just constantly changing. And you deliberately speed up the rate of perception. Now, many people don't understand this, the perception of impermanence. So you talk about impermanence, and they say, yeah, everything's impermanent. Yeah, but that's very superficial. Impermanence refers to seeing how quickly the five aggregates are arising and vanishing within the nervous system. Feelings, perceptions, volitions, and thoughts, and so on. By not clinging on to them. But normally we cling to the various sense impressions, and then that's when the mind builds its history around them and takes us out of the present moment, and then creates our delusions of the past and the future, and the worries and fears. It's because of the holding on to the particular feeling or thought or sound or smell or taste. And that's why the Buddha, in the contemplation of the Dhamma, the Buddha had us just being able to recognize, this is material vibration, this is feeling, this is perception, this is volition. And when you're just watching those things, the meanings of them fall away. And you're just seeing those very basic moments of vibration, feeling, perception, volition, because you're not giving energy to them. You see how quickly they just arise and vanish. And tuning into that is called tuning into the flow of impermanence. And because it's only because we cling on to the objects is how the mind builds its idea of the world around those objects, and also the sense of I and me that is the doer, or where the world revolves around I or me. This idea that we're sitting here in the world and we have all, that is just a mental creation. The mind is recreating basically every moment. But anyway, that's very not easy to understand that. That's why the Buddha told Ananda. Ananda thought, this dependent origination, clear as pie, The Buddha said, no. But anyway, so that perception of permanence leads to the perception of no self, because of this sense of I, the idea that I am hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and thinking. I am deciding to do this. I am deciding to do this. This is mine. Look at me. I want this. All these thoughts keep that feeling of a separate I in place. But when you're no longer feeding that, when you withdraw that energy through the mindfulness and the concentration and the wisdom, that's where the wisdom plays its important part, is the wisdom is understanding all these different aspects of the body-mind process. Then you're no longer feeding that process. And the sense of I in even the body, actually, I forgot to mention that. Some of you might have experienced this actually before. And when you gain a deep state of concentration, and you're no longer worrying about the various pains and, and stuff, and you just have been relaxed and you've reached a level of awareness, and sometimes the solid feeling of a body may vanish from the mind. And you might get a few brief moments of where you feel like the body sort of like disappeared and there was only awareness. So that's a very valuable insight because it shows that the body only feels solid and heavy because of our continued identification and clinging and attachment to it. But in a deep state of concentration, you can feel like the feeling of a body disappears. But there's still awareness, and there's still sensations of a body, and there still might even be pains. But these pains are like just something that's floating around in space. It's you're no longer locating it in a body, and this body belongs to me. That's how the mind is always relating everything. But through the development of mindfulness and concentration and the wisdom, that's what's important, the wisdom, that the insights that give you glimpses of that the mind starts to let go of its tight hold on it. And so you can actually have this kind of experiences where you feeling and of the body disappears, and with it all the pains and so on. So that's just one kind of insight. And then even the sense of the I and me might disappear too. But that's more scary for people. When the feeling of the body disappears, people say, wow, wooey, cool, wow. But when the sense of I starts disappearing, ooh, they start panicking because they get a fear. Like the rug is being pulled out from under your feet. And that's why when a lot of people reach a deep state of concentration, without, fear arises. And sometimes they don't even know why, they're not aware of it. But it's the fear of death, actually. And so their minds get jerked back into thinking and so on. But if you know that experience, is valid, and learn how to gradually accept it and not to have fear when the mind starts to kind of dissolve, then you can relax into that and let it expand for whatever it's worth, or as far as it'll go. Of course, it takes a lot of practice to do that. But one has to understand the mechanics of the mental process. And that's why the Vipassana meditation is in the 4 foundations of mindfulness are designed for really step by step learning how this body and mind operate, especially in terms of the conditioned nature of it and the accumulation of all of the habit patterns and so on connected with it that keep the mind caught in its repetitive and behaviors, and so on. So actually as part of the Dhammanupassana, the fourth contemplation of, the fourth foundation of mindfulness, Dhammanupassana, there's the 7 factors of enlightenment, or is one of those categories in the Dhammanupassana. And basically it's the understanding how, mindfulness leads to concentration. So a lot of people think, again, that, concentration is just taking a single object and taking that somewhere and sitting down somewhere and just focusing on that and trying to kind of blot out the world or something and enter some, state of emptiness or just bliss and so on. But when you study those 7 factors of enlightenment, and by practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness, you understand, mindfulness is the first factor of enlightenment. And basically that means the alertness, moment-to-moment alertness. And then you investigate what you're alert to. You investigate this body. What is this body made up of? Okay, so on the surface is 32 body parts. Deeper down is just these atoms and molecules. Cells, molecules, atoms, electrons. Basically just energy. So this is the type of actually investigation and insight. Because when you come to that insight, you'll have a moment of where the body, you actually just feel like the body is just, energy vibrations. All the solidity and everything had vanished. And that's how that process works. And the development of the wisdom. How the intellectual wisdom leads you to the contemplative wisdom, and the contemplative wisdom leads you to the actual transformation of consciousness into the direct, liberating sort of insights. Anyway, so the investigation of Dhamma, that gives you energy. Because just like a scientist trying to discover the cure for some disease, if he thinks he's getting closer, he'd stay up all day and night, not he gets tired. Because he wants to win the Nobel Prize, I guess. But apart from that, right? So that investigation gives you energy because it's like you're actually learning something that feels valuable. And so, and that leads to joy. The mind becomes happy when it's filled with a kind of a positive energy. Most people have a negative energy, so it's not joyful with the positive energy. And that leads to the tranquility. The body and mind become very tranquil and very focused. And that leads to concentration. And that's when you attain jhana. And by holding that long enough, by going from the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, you attain the equanimity. And the next step after equanimity is, like entering the stream. So I'm just explaining that because just to see how the whole process is, a step-by-step methodical cultivation of those stepping stones, how each one leads to the next one. So anyway, many of you may not be at that level necessarily, but you never know, actually. And you never know when the mind, you might think, oh, it's time to meditate. I don't know. I probably just wind up going to sleep and meditate or something, or there's monkey mind thoughts. And so you might be reluctant, but then you'll go, yeah, I'll go and sit down and You sit down and then you'll be surprised. The mind might just on its own go into a good state of awareness and so on, even without sometimes much effort. But other times you think, oh yeah, I'm going to go down, I'm going to take the jhanas and have this. And then the opposite will happen. You'll get hit in the face with all, every kind of hindrance in the book. So, so anyway, learning how to do the practice sort of step by step. That means you sit down, you try to have a good posture, because that's the laboratory. Actually, really, this body is the laboratory, and the nervous system, with this delicate system of nerves and all these other things that are intimately connected, we have to keep them in a good order. That means by learning how to sit straight, and then knowing that the breathing, learning how to use the breath to develop a good concentration. And deep breathing is one of the better ways to do that, at least initially. Because if you just sit down and try to watch the breath, most people's breath is so faint or shallow, or especially if they're trying to feel the sensation at the tip of the nose, it's not enough to really hold their attention. And so they may space out or get lost in thoughts. Some might be able to hold that. But the oxygenating the blood, see, the whole body works off of cellular vibration, right? And that depends on oxygen getting into the system. And that oxygen is carried out by the blood to all the cells of the body to keep them charged up. That's why doing deep, slow breathing at the beginning of the meditation is very useful for developing that more alert state of mind. But if people haven't been doing that, or teachers say, don't control the breath, don't control the breath, that would be fine if they had proper breathing in the first place, but most people don't. And so then they find it harder, might find it harder to. So anyway, just sitting down and doing some deep, slow breathing to help really feel the body, and then continue to use that breathing to really start feeling the sensations in the body, and then using that to be aware of the thoughts and urges that start coming up, and developing that ability to just let go of them and see how quickly tuning in, opening up to that flow of impermanence. And that's a concentrated state. Now, some people say, oh, I get too distracted if I'm trying to feel and watch all these things. That is because you're not concentrated yet. But once you're concentrated, millions of things can be coming through, and you can see them all perfectly clearly without any agitation or anything. But it all depends on the level of concentration. Okay, so anyway, I think we covered a lot of ground, so I hope I didn't confuse anybody. But a lot of people, they meditate and they gain some concentration, and it's kind of a nice, pleasant, light feeling, and they kind of just want to groove with that, and or some people say, well, what's next? I've been watching the breath all this time. Well, what's next? Well, I just described what's next, but people don't go on to that what's next, and they can get stuck in just this wowie wooey kind of first jhana, feeling. if they don't use it to apply the insight, to open up to the flow of impermanence. Okay, so as we've already been sitting, an hour, a little more, you might have some discomfort coming into your body. So I'm going to stand up and do a short standing awareness, maybe a turn around the room and walking, and then sit down after that. Okay?
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.